Hello, everybody. Tom Sykes, the Royalist here. I'm happy to say I can see the mighty Tim Teeman backstage. I have now got rid of the echo. You'll be glad to hear. Tim is backstage, waiting to join us. Yes, so another extraordinary day in the wreckage of Prince Andrew's dignity. It's basically Virginia Giuffre's posthumous memoir has been published today. It's called Nobody's Girl. You can see it up on the screen there. Me and Tim have both read quite a lot of extracts from it. We haven't read the whole thing, but we've read some reviews, and basically the reviews that it's getting are just saying that it's a gut-wrenching account of corruption, of abuse, a searing testament from beyond the grave, and it couldn't really have happened at a worse time for Prince Andrew. He made this slightly mealy-mouthed attempt to sort of diffuse the scandal on Friday by saying that he would stop using his Duke of York title. Of course, as lots of people have pointed out since then, it was an incredibly self-serving statement saying that he still didn't accept any guilt or blame or admit that he'd even done anything, that he denied everything, didn't apologize for his behavior, didn't express any sympathy for Epstein's victims, nothing like, the usual Prince Andrew stuff. Then late last night, a report in the London Times saying that he hasn't paid rent at Royal Lodge for 22 years, has been paying one peppercorn per annum if demanded. Guess what? The peppercorn hasn't been demanded. And then this morning, an MSP submitting an early day motion to Parliament, seeking to get Andrew properly stripped of his Duke of York title rather than just, I'm not going to use it. But I think we're going to kick off with Virginia's book, Virginia's memoir. So Tim, if you're ready, I'm going to add you now. Big round of applause, please, for Tim Teeman.
Hey, good morning. Well, good afternoon.
Hi,
Morning, America. Good afternoon, Britain. Tom, you've got to sort. I'm like going to be your granny. Sort your tie out. Sort your tie out. There you go.
I can't. I'm not at home. I'm not at home, as my regular readers can tell.
Bit more
bit more central.
Bit more central. I'm in a t-shirt. I can't talk. So
right. Well, it's great to have you as always, Tim.
Thank you.
I called Tim this morning and I said, look, we should definitely do the Peppercorn Prince, the rent, all of that, this outrage. And Tim, with his unerring news instinct, said, I think the story today is this memoir being published today and what it means for Andrew. We obviously haven't had time to read the whole thing yet, Tim, but as I was saying, we've both read quite a lot of extracts and reviews, and it's universally getting incredible reviews, and obviously the context of the time it's appearing. I mean, one obviously feels so sorry for Virginia Giuffre that she's not here to see the impact that it's having. But I mean, tell me why. What's your sort of thoughts about it this morning, about this memoir and about what it means for Andrew?
It's really interesting. I don't know about you, Tom, and I'm not sure about the listeners and viewers who are watching us today, but I've been obviously watching a lot of the media coverage over the last few days, and a lot of the commentary and all of that sort of stuff. And what really strikes me over and over again is commentators, particularly British commentators, talking about this as a PR disaster for the palace, or a PR disaster for Andrew, or gosh, another royal scandal. How much more will be revealed? How much more can the royal family take? And you're sort of like, I mean, am I the only one thinking a woman's life was massively ruined here? Andrew, obviously, we must always say when we're discussing this, vigorously denies all and any accusations made against him. But what interests me about the focus of the last few days is it's almost like a media story for the media. Like, and it seems like a complete misreading to me as just somebody watching of what the situation is, which was the abuse of a woman over a period of time, and which she writes about, as we can see in these extracts, and as I think the book, as one can see in the reviews of the book, have made very clear, writes in harrowing detail about what she went through at the hands of Jeffrey Epstein, and she talks about her encounters with Prince Andrew as well. Now, the thing that really sticks in my mind at the moment is it would be nice to focus on Virginia Giuffre and what she went through and what her own words say about it, rather than this being a media story for the media about the media, about Prince Andrew and a PR disaster. This isn't, PR disasters happen because people make them happen. And if people make PR disasters happen, we need to look at the quality and character of the person at the center of them. And it seems to me at the moment that this is being treated almost as oh gosh, another royal family scandal. What will they do next? How can they get out of this one? And you're like, well, no, there are very serious things that are being alleged and leveled here. And the real questions are, will Prince Andrew and should Prince Andrew be investigated by authorities, the British police, the American authorities, whoever? Does he have any case to answer? If, say, these accusations were being made about any ordinary person, would they not already be being spoken to by the cops, by the police? The story, obviously, as you say, Tom, the big story today, in the papers at least, is the continuing row, let's face it, over Royal Lodge and this Peppercorn rent thing. And Andrew essentially not paying, Tom, is it 22 years now? He was due to pay what the British call a peppercorn, i.e. literally a peppercorn, by the way, that's so British, rent for this place, which he actually hasn't even paid.
Yeah, and it's a medieval custom whereby a contract wasn't, in order for a contract to be sort of legally active,
right.
a sum had to be paid for a service. And so over time, a peppercorn became the nominal amount because it was sort of seen as something mildly exotic, but it was also sort of durable. And people could lay their hands on one. It wasn't completely without value.
Absolutely.
But it's absolutely absurd, isn't it? And I mean, it's disgusting, really, in the context of this book coming out, that he is kind of reveling in his, feudal sort of feudal arrangement.
I think the public would feel. I mean, Prince Andrew has always reveled in status. He's always reveled in playing the big I am and sort of traveling the world and being Mr. British business for a period of time and trying to find a purpose for himself in that arena. I just think what's super interesting, I mean, I watched about 4 or 5 British TV segments yesterday. So coming out of a turbulent weekend that, we all experienced in terms of a drip of stories, and flowing from the palace is inadequate, he's going to relinquish his title storyline on Friday. And what really struck me yesterday was people talking about this almost as if it was a bit of a snafu, and it's in the character of journalists to want to move stories forward, but what they're not doing, and what nobody is doing, and what I found really interesting over and over again, was announcers looking very gravely at the camera and saying, yes, these are very, very harrowing passages in Virginia Giuffre's memoir, and then moving on to the thing, and I'm like, read them out. Make sure, if you're wanting to do justice to this story at this moment, give the woman her voice. Her voice was denied to her all the way through this story. It's always been denied. She's been castigated, she's been insulted, she's been denigrated. And here in page form, after her death, are her words. And I think the least the media could do at this point is read those words out, or make sure those words are as clearly transmitted to TV viewers and to newspaper readers, so people are in no doubt about Virginia Giuffre's voice, as they are as focused on getting the latest newsline out of Buckingham Palace. That's what I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're absolutely right, Tim. And I think that it's sort of the way that Virginia Giuffre has been cast in this story, has been portrayed in this story as alternately, a fantasist, a sex worker, all these kind of very denigrating, terms that have been applied to her, basically to undermine her credibility, and
Right.
that's all that anyone ever set out to do. And I mean, it was interesting when this whole story was happening. I had quite a lot of phone conversations with David Boyce, who was Virginia's lawyer, because it was like civil action. So this is always slightly baffling to English people, where in America lawyers are quite happy to call up journalists and chat to you. And what David Boyce always said to me was, he said that from the moment that Andrew denied on that Newsnight interview that he'd ever met Virginia, he said they'd won the case, because all they then ever had to do was prove that they'd been in the same place at the same time. And it was Andrew's credibility that actually fell apart. This isn't about, what I'm trying to say is, this isn't about Virginia Giuffre's credibility. This is about Prince Andrew's credibility. And, this fact that also emerged over the weekend, that he got her social security number and her date of birth and just completely illegally gave it to his head of security and told them to dig up dirt on her. I mean, of course, of course he did. But at the same time, it is still just really disgusting and shocking. And
I think it's interesting that sexism and misogyny and deferral to power are at the heart of this current revolution of this story. And maybe things are moving on with the publication of the book, but what I do think is interesting is in the reporting and in the framing of Prince Andrew and Virginia Giuffre over the years has been a set of classic things almost outside of them both, which is sexism and misogyny against women, sexism and misogyny against sex workers, not believing people who claim they've been trafficked, and instead a sort of fascination and focus on men in power, or a kind of, how are they gonna, the framing of this story this weekend over the last few days is, how's Andrew gonna keep hold of that? Is he gonna lose that? What's gonna happen next with Andrew, and I don't know. I mean, of course we care about what's gonna happen next with Prince Andrew. He's a powerful public figure, but I do think it's interesting that in the framing of the story, the media aren't quoting Virginia Giuffre's own words as much as they are mulling what is going to happen to this man. And to hear the British government on Radio 4 yesterday on the, I think it was on PM, the news magazine show on Radio 4, saying, this isn't anything to do with the British government, essentially. We defer to, we think the royal family should, we respect the right of the royal family. I'm sort of paraphrasing.
Basically, the royal family can police themselves, wasn't it? Was basically what they were saying.
It was kind of that. And I thought, wait, the British taxpayer pays for the royal family, and you are the government of the British taxpayer. And to wash your hands completely of it seems legally odd, and also governmentally sort of odd. It wasn't really discussed much after that. They had another newsline to try and get out of the minister concerned. But I just think it's imperative and incumbent upon people covering this story to not only let Virginia Giuffre's voice be heard finally, especially given the book is now out, but also to consider how the story is being framed, whose voices are being primaried, and what happened to this person, and what justice in very, very much retrospect, in tragic retrospect, might finally look like for this person. That's my only thought. And I know the story will move on again. And of course, I'm not saying that the issue of Prince Andrew paying Peppercorn rent and the scandal of that and what is going to happen next at Royal Lodge isn't of interest. And because Prince Andrew is alive, he's a person of power. I would just like journalists covering the story, or people thinking about the story, to think about the woman, Virginia Giuffre, who is at the heart of this story and weirdly keeps being displaced from the heart of her own story, if that makes sense.
Or even worse than that. I mean, being, there was a Daily News story that famously had a headline across the top of it that said something like, Virginia Giuffre wasn't a sex slave. She was a money hungry sex kitten. Do
Oh
you know
my,
what I mean? It was unbelievable. This was part of the sort of pre-trial campaign, basically, that went on both sides. Andrew's lawyer, who I also spoke to, had
yeah,
represented a lot of the male, I can't remember what he was called now, but he'd represented a lot of the male Me Too, people saying, oh, this is all just a load of rubbish that was all made up.
yeah,
So yeah, just the extract that I read, there's an amazing sequence in it where she describes being taken to Epstein's house for the first time. She goes in, he's lying naked on the massage table. She doesn't know what to do. She is like a masseur at the Mar-a-Lago.
that's
And
right.
she goes in, she doesn't know what to do. She's totally spun out. And Virginia, Gillian Maxwell, basically sort of enables the whole thing and
Yeah,
makes it all seem okay. And it's like, this is how you do it. And then, they flip Epstein over with obviously predictable results. And then it all kicks off
yeah,
and it turns from being this faux sports massage into being a overtly sexual occasion. And I think it's brilliant how she describes it. She says, this is the moment that something cracked inside me. How else to explain why my memories of what came next are splintered into jagged shards? Maxwell peeling off her clothes, a mischievous look on her face. Maxwell behind me unzipping my skirt and pulling my Mar-a-Lago polo shirt over my head.
yeah,
Epstein and Maxwell
yeah.
laughing at my underwear, which were dotted with tiny hearts. How cute. She still wears little girls' panties, Epstein said. And then she says, and this I thought was a very insightful line by her. Insightful is wrong. She's the wrong word, but you know what I mean. A familiar emptiness flooded me. How many times did I put my faith in someone only to be hurt and humiliated? I could feel my brain begin to shut down. My body couldn't escape from this room, but my mind couldn't bear to stay, so it put me on a kind of autopilot, submissive and determined to survive. So many young women, myself included, have been criticized for returning to Epstein's lair, even after we knew what he wanted from us. How can you complain about being abused, some of us, when you could so easily have stayed away?
Yeah.
Several of us had been molested or raped as children. Many of us were poor or even homeless. We were girls who no one came about, cared about, and Epstein pretended to care. A master manipulator, he threw what looked like a lifeline to girls who were drowning. If they wanted to be dancers, he offered dance lessons. If they aspired to be actors, he said he'd help them get roles, and then he did his worst to them.
Uh, I
I
mean,
think it's an incredibly, yeah. I mean, look, it speaks for itself.
she is laying out there, and the extracts I've read so far, and I'm not sure if people listening or to us or watching us today have seen them as well, lay out in brutal, clarifying detail what the personal and vicious experience of sex trafficking is. And I think my impression is oddly, for the media talking and getting so frothed up and interested in Prince Andrew's future, those details, the media love to package things and make things bite-sized and palatable for their viewers. And there is something to really make people grow up around this story. I think it would be good for people in a mass way to know what Virginia Giuffre is saying. And I think at the moment, even now, weirdly, either because the media doesn't want to shock their viewers or wants to titillate them, but only on the royal end of things, they're still not giving her her voice. They say things to camera like very harrowing details. And you're like, and if you're watching it and you haven't read anything, you're like, what? Like,
Yeah.
what has she said? What has Virginia Giuffre said, TV presenter? And they just kind of, then it's off to Royal Lodge kind of speculation again. Tom, I know that
Yeah.
I think we've made our feelings at least clear
Yes,
about where we
indeed.
feel about these things. For
Yeah.
the people watching and listening, where are stories at? Where have things reached?
So
I mean,
yeah, so it's been given a whole new. I think that Giuffre's memoir it has shocked people. I think very much into action. So I think that the Times obviously did this amazing story. They got hold of the lease, which showed this kind of feudal arrangement.
Yeah.
That Andrew's basically living there for free.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting is that literally about 20 minutes ago, an MP, a member of the
Robert Jenrick.
SNP,
Oh, okay.
yeah. Yes. So Robert Jenrick said something to the BBC.
Let's
which
explain
seemed,
who Robert Jenrick,
yes.
by the way, everyone, is the Shadow Justice Secretary in Britain. He speaks on he's the Shadow Justice Secretary, so he speaks for justice on issues around that for the Conservative Party, who are currently in opposition in Britain. Anyway, sorry, carry on.
And he's a contender he's a big contender for the leadership. So he's not a nobody.
Yeah.
He told the BBC the public was sick of the Duke of York and that he should make his own way in life. And amongst other comments, but
but hang on, he said meaning get out of Royal Lodge, right?
Meaning get out of Royal Lodge,
right?
Exactly. This was in the context of the Royal Lodge story, and it's interesting because usually when you ask about a politician any question about the royal family, they go into a frozen hunking down posture and refuse to make any comments because they don't want to get drawn into it. And this is clearly, and I think with Giuffre's memoir coming out, I think it's the mainstream position now is that something has to be done. And I think that the point is that what has also become very clear in really quite astonishingly quick time, and we were very quick on the Royalist Substack to say this is nothing, nothing has really changed. That narrative is now starting to emerge in the mainstream papers, that people are realizing. So actually, I quoted, there's a good constitutional historian called Rafe Hadel-Manku.
Let's be just a bit clear about what you mean, which I think is when we said to people on Friday, when you were writing about it, we were on here talking about it, we were saying that this relinquishing, as they called it on Friday, of royal titles was a sort of PR window dressing move and didn't amount to much. You're saying that has now become mainstream received opinion, but what the palace tried on Friday, people are like, this ain't gonna cut it. That's what you mean,
people
right?
have seen through it, and I think the palace are a bit astonished how quickly people are starting to see through it.
Okay.
That's exactly what I mean. So what I reported on Friday or Saturday, actually, and I have to credit one of my amazing readers, flagged it to me. Constitutional historian Rafe Hadel-Manku, who's the editor of Burke's Peerage, which is this kind of old-fashioned British heritage, landed families book where you can look up your posh mates and see how posh they are. That's now morphed into a kind of online genealogical manners kind of website, but he's good, Rafe, and he said Prince Andrew has not been formally stripped of his titles. Legally, he remains HRH, the Prince Andrew, Duke of York, Earl of Inverness, Barry Killyleagh, KG, GCVO. He has agreed that he will not use or be known by any of these titles, styles, and honours. Well, and obviously that is not satisfactory. That is not a satisfactory position, that he is still legally the Duke of York. He still has his dukedom. What I've been reporting this weekend is that William, when he comes to the throne, is going to get rid of him being the Duke of York, and he will get rid of him being Prince Andrew, because you're only a prince or a princess by virtue of a thing called letters patent, which is like an executive order from the king. And that could just be, you could issue a new one saying that only working royals will be a prince or princess. And William, I've been told, is going to do this. Yeah, so lots of people are saying they should do this before William has to. Charles should have done it. Look, Charles should have done it, but the reality is he's too weak. He's got cancer. He doesn't look great. It's too much for him to do right now. And I'm not saying like, oh, we should all feel sorry for Charles. Like, he has handled this incredibly badly. He has handled it incredibly badly. There's literally people, A.N. Wilson writing in the Daily Mail that this could bring down the monarchy, all this. There's no doubt that Charles handled this incredibly badly. Charles was handed a perfectly workable settlement by his mother, which was that Andrew stayed completely out of view. And Charles, for reasons best known to himself, decided to bring Andrew back into public view, decided to parade him to church at Sandringham, decided to bring him to Easter, decided to, have him show up at every event to show what a marvelous conciliatory person he was. And I do actually think that if there hadn't been all this focus on Andrew in brought back onto him by Charles, I think that potentially there wouldn't be all these calls for, of what's happening at the moment. I just think it wouldn't have been in the media in the same way, Tim. I mean, I don't know whether you agree with me, but
I'm not sure. I was reading and thinking about the late Queen, about Queen Elizabeth. And I was thinking about this in the context of women in the royal family around Prince Andrew, whether it be the Queen, Sarah Ferguson, and Prince Andrew's daughters themselves. And I find myself wondering and asking, what have these women known? And what have these women... I don't know the answers to this. I'm not presupposing anything, but I find particularly the position of the late Queen. I don't know if Charles, I wouldn't, you know better than me, Tom, probably, but I wouldn't say that Charles has paraded Andrew. I would say that Andrew keeps turning up at things which Charles is powerless to stop him from turning up to, frankly. I mean, Charles could keep him locked up in a tower, but had Charles not invited him to X, if Charles had said,
no, you can't say that, Tim. Like, how on earth could Charles think it's a good idea? Like, of course, Charles could have not. The Queen said to him, "You're not coming to Christmas with us. You're not coming to Christmas morning."
The Queen is the interesting figure for me here. Like, she was extremely old, and
by the way, just to say, this picture here. So that's the Queen Mother in the centre. That's George VI talking to her. That's Queen Elizabeth, obviously, on the right, and that's her sister Margaret on the left. And they're outside Royal Lodge. It's quite hard to find new pictures of Royal Lodge. There it is. And there it is. So that's where Andrew's living and has been paying the princely sum of 1 peppercorn per year to live there. And it's got 90 acres. It's got 90 acres of grounds as well.
Tom,
back to the Queen.
I think one of the issues is the enabling of Prince Andrew all the way along. And I'm not saying that Charles hasn't continued that, but I do wonder if Andrew, or if a solution to the Andrew problem hadn't maybe been worked out a bit sooner. I'm not sure things would have, well, who knows how far things would have gone. Because again, and I do keep returning to this, the Andrew problem is Andrew's problem, and the accusations against him as regards Virginia Giuffre are extremely serious. Now, what did the royal family know or not know about it? Like, what did anyone with any power know or not know about it? And did they see it as a massive problem with a person, or a massive problem for their institution that they wanted to put aside or deal with in some administrative sense? Because there is something so not administrative about this problem. There is something so deeply focused on the person and possible crime that, I mean, what does...
No, I mean, it's undeniable that her reputation, her posthumous reputation, someone was saying her reputation has suffered over this. It is impossible that she knew nothing of what was going on. There have always been lurid stories about the royals. There has always been people seeking to, publicize and make stuff up and all of that. And I'm sure Andrew used that as his excuse. I'm sure that's what he said was going on. He said, this is just another crazy person who's making stuff up, who's claimed that, there's so many people, they pop up every day in magazines all over the world saying they've had love children by the royals. They are love children of the royals, all that. So I'm sure in a way it was a kind of bit of an open goal for Andrew to say it. But I think the point at which the Queen gave him $14 million to pay off Virginia Giuffre, she must have realized this was a slightly different kettle of fish, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
I think so. I think what would satisfy the public, if whoever is interested in the story or in Virginia Giuffre story or in this whole nest of stories, I think what the public would like to see at the moment is some sense of justice. Now, I cannot say what that justice is, but I think the notion that no one is above the law is the thing that the general public would like to see reflected in where this story goes going next. At the moment, from a public perception point of view, a rich, powerful person has allegedly behaved in ways that would attract the attention of the authorities. And at the moment, Andrew hasn't responded or in any way engaged with the authorities in any sense around this story. In fact, has fiercely resisted.
Yeah.
And so, as whatever happens now,
Resisted an MLA, resisted a mutual legal assistance request
that's
in the
right,
United
Tom.
States.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
sort of Royal Lodge, I think, for the media and for us generally, is a talisman at the moment. It's it's so iniquitous.
Yeah.
What seemingly has happened there, but he's not paying rent on this thing. He's at the center of this scandal and he continues to lord it around, and he's living in a fabulous property for no money whatsoever. Well, that just screams injustice on one level. And I think in some other level, people, if the royal family / Prince Andrew / whoever represents him is interested in any kind of if not rehabilitation, then at least a kind of doing the right thing, literally, and not just in PR terms, but doing the right things as a human being and as an institution made up of human beings, is to say he should be treated just like anybody else in this situation and let the wheels of justice turn for him as they would turn for anyone else. Then he can have his day in court. Then he can have his own say. Then he can stop releasing statements which don't answer anything. Then he can, then we'll know. He denies everything. We know that because the same two-line statement is constantly wheeled out. But that two-line statement of vigorously denying everything doesn't seem appropriate or an appropriate counterweight to everything that's sort of flying at him now. I would say. How about you?
Definitely.
What are you hearing? What are you hearing from sort of backstage? How does the palace feel that the last few days have gone, and where do they feel they can, as it were, ride this one out as they've ridden other stories out, or do they feel this one is here to stay, extremely grave, and they are really trying to figure out what the next step move is? What's going on backstage?
I think they know it hasn't worked. Okay. And there's a very poor attempt to say this is business as usual. Charles appeared yesterday, very important engagement at the scene of the Manchester synagogue attack. Very important engagement. He looked absolutely terrible. Caked in makeup. He seemed to have a big bruise under his eye. I mean, he looked absolutely appalling. Tomorrow he goes to the Vatican, where he's going to become the first leader of the Church of England to pray with the Pope. This is so a vintage Charles moment. I'm the defender of all faiths. I'm going to get down on my knees with the leader of the Catholic Church and bring to an end 500 years of division started by Henry VIII. And, and it's all just hopelessly overshadowed. I mean, I think the fact that questions are now, I'm so sorry. Someone just tried to call me, but I hope that's gone away. Okay. I think the fact that it's now in Parliament and that people are asking questions in Parliament, and it feels to me like this is of a very different order. But at the same time, it's now very hard to see what actually can be done, right? Because, okay, so let's say, for the sake of argument, that Charles's people got it together and they said, okay, we're going to issue new letters patent. You're going to have your prince title taken away. We're going to find some clause or something to get you out of Royal Lodge. There must be something about bringing the family into disrepute or something, Anyway, they find some clause to get, or they pay him off to get rid of him, which is what I've always been told is the other option. What actually happens there? That he is apparently being investigated over the allegation that he tried to get the personal security guy to investigate and dig up dirt on Virginia Giuffre.
Yeah.
So, maybe the royals allow one of these prosecutions to go forward, and it becomes like the Al Capone thing, where he's brought down for the taxes. I don't know, like
But the royals shouldn't.
maybe.
But the royals shouldn't. The royals shouldn't have it in their power to let any sort of prosecution go. What I mean is, he should be being treated like any.
As I was saying that, I was thinking the same thing. But
Okay.
we know that's the truth. We know that's the truth, that this man is above the law, that the royal family are above the
Well,
law.
then this is a great.
King Charles was accepting bagfuls of £250,000 in euros 3 years ago.
Then this really is a reckoning of a bigger reckoning for the royal family. Then does the British people and does the world want a royal family that exists in some Ruritanian fantasy land of being above the law, or does it want a royal family? Sure, have your royal family, but they have to abide by the same rules and laws as the rest of us. And to your point, Tom, this is a moment. This could be a more profound moment of reckoning, not just in terms of how the royal family feels it can behave, but in terms of the standard of behavior that the public expects and demands of that royal family, right?
But this is basically the point that A.N. Wilson was making. And A.N. Wilson I suppose he's a bit of a sort of lefty, isn't he, in his own sort of posh way. But he was making this point in the Mail, saying that what has happened with Andrew threatens the continuation of the monarchy. I mean, it in one sense it feels like a stretch to say that, but on the other hand, I when massive change happens, it does tend to happen, very slowly and then all at once. And this does feel like a moment that could tip into an all at once kind of moment. I think there's just about enough residual affection for Charles, and I think people are genuinely optimistic about the reign of William. And I think that, obviously the real nuclear option that they could go to first would be Charles' abdication, Charles' regency, something like that. I mean, it would be over his dead body. But if it could really be made clear to him that he has mismanaged this so badly that the only option is to install King William, and King William then, does get rid of all the special protection, says we are normal people, we are subject to the same rules as everyone else. Maybe. I don't know. I don't see it. I see them just carrying on, allowing as I said earlier, allowing a police prosecution to take place might be the best that we could hope for on this sort of minor issue.
You mentioned King William a few times in this conversation, and he obviously, as watchers and listeners to this broadcast will know, has been figuring the stories a lot. We know you mentioned you were first with the story, actually, and I want to make that clear to everyone. Tom has been on top of this story for the last few days, even when he was trying to take a day off. But you mentioned when we last spoke, and you mentioned in your Substack copy and in the Daily Beast, that Prince William at the moment was taking sort of pole position in the decision making and feels much more fierce and fiercely kind of resolved on demoting and sort of exiling, for want of a better term, Prince Andrew than his dad. Can you just very briefly, I know we're almost at the end of time and I know I have stuff to be getting on with. Where is Prince William in this? How key a power player in Prince Andrew's future is he going to be in the future, but is he really right now?
So what I can tell you is that he was not happy with the statement. He was not happy with it coming from Andrew rather than coming from the King's office. He was not happy with the tone, and he was not at all happy with this is Andrew's voluntary choice to just stop using the titles, because he saw what happened with Meghan, that Meghan has been using the HRH even though she agreed not to. And Andrew, don't forget, 3 years ago, sent an Instagram signed HRH to sort of test the water and see what happens. So William was very much not happy with it. He wanted it to go a lot further, but in the end agreed that it was better to have something rather than nothing. But ultimately, when William comes to the throne, there's going to be a massive shake-up. He's just not going to tolerate all these people, people walking around calling themselves prince and princess and HRH this, and unless they're doing something, unless they're doing something for the royal family, unless they're doing something for the nation, unless they're doing something for the country. And frankly, that's the way it should be. He's absolutely right. It should have been done when Charles took over. Charles should have taken over 10 years before Queen Elizabeth died, rather than trying to do everything suddenly now when he's got 7 years. So I'm afraid, that the whole thing has been completely mismanaged, and it has actually brought the monarchy to a moment of peril and decision where they need to decide, are they going to continue being a bunch of idiot feudal toffs who spend their time shooting and inviting their mates to shooting parties and going back to their pals' shooting parties and charging each other one peppercorn to live in 90-acre, 30-room houses set on 90 acres of parkland 20 minutes from London? Or are they actually going to, be normal people like the rest of us? So it's a huge moment for them, huge moment for William, and I wonder now whether actually William will assert himself now, and we will see those changes happen in the reign of King Charles rather than in the reign of King William.
I'm seeing a lot of people commenting in our little comments, and I'm sorry, Tom, you've probably got the best technology there, and everyone else is. I'm apologizing for my eyesight if I'm getting this wrong, but I'm seeing a lot of people typing and asking questions about Beatrice and Eugenie. Now, on Friday, we know that there was a very sort of emphasized thing in the statements and in the briefings you were getting, Tom, that there's clearly a lot of royal liking for the girls, Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson's daughters. Within the palace. But I think over the last few days, there have been questions, and certainly questions being raised by our watchers and listeners here about them, either what they knew, didn't know, and are they, and by extension Sarah Ferguson, I suppose, enmeshed in this in maybe a darker way, or do you think they will emerge absolutely blemish-free, as it would seem the royal family would like them to be?
Well, Andrew Loney insists that they are absolutely up to their necks in it, and that it's coming for them as much as it's come for Andrew. And it was noticeable that on the day that all of the serializations began to drop in the Daily Mail, Beatrice was appearing in the lobby for a photo call to celebrate the opening of First Bank Abu Dhabi. So there's definitely questions over them. I mean, I happen to know lots of people who know them, as I've said before.
Yeah.
Who say that they're very nice people. They're both, young women with young families trying to get on. There's an extent to which I don't believe that we should be held responsible for the sins of our parents. I really hope for their sake that they have not accepted money from dubious sources, but unfortunately we do know that money was sent to Andrew, earmarked with reference codes like things like, that it was money for the children's weddings, or it was money for the children's birthdays, or that kind of stuff. If they have accepted money over the years, I think that things are going to get very, very difficult for them. I do think also that probably the best thing that ever happened to them was that they were cut loose from the royal family in any significant way about 15 years ago. So they haven't really ever had any role in public life as adults. So they have been able to stay a bit more under the radar. And I think they are more regarded as more collateral. My sense is that people see them as collateral damage of their parents. And I think that generally there's a lot of sympathy for them. I agree that's not universal. And, that some people, specifically, frankly, the man who has all the answers at the moment, Andrew Loney, think that they are in big trouble. But we'll wait and see.
1 minute really before the hour is out. In very quick span of time, do we know where the story goes next? What are you hitting the phones about? Where do you think the story goes next in the next hours, days? Is it all about getting Andrew essentially out of Royal Lodge and throwing that piece of red meat to the media and public, or do you think it goes somewhere else in some sense?
I don't think they can get him out. I think that probably I think it's the police inquiry into the social security number of Virginia Giuffre, and I think does the royal family, does the king give the nod to his parliament to strip his brother of his title? I think those are probably the things to watch. I think it'll be very, very interesting if there's a debate in the Houses of Parliament, because obviously anything that the MP says is covered by parliamentary privilege, so they can say a great deal more than the newspapers can say. So I don't know if the King will be happy to allow his Parliament to debate this matter, but we shall see. We shall see.
Fantastic. Thanks, Tom.
Brilliant. All right, Tim. Well, look, it's been brilliant talk. Why don't you do the outro to everybody, and I'll concentrate on trying to end the stream.
Okay. Well, if I don't say something, you just make sure you say it, because I might get the wording wrong. I want to say thank you to everyone. This is really Tom's thing, and I'm just along for a very bumpy ride at the moment, I would say, probably. Thanks very much for watching and listening. Please keep the questions, comments, likes, and whatever else coming, because they really help Tom and me in our conversation. I think it's really important in sort of all royal stories, indeed in a lot of journalism, to be receptive to what people are thinking and hearing. And if you have questions that you do not feel that the media, or if you're interested in a story that the media aren't answering, then do feel free to put them to Tom and myself in the comments. And the next time we have a chat, we'll try and get to them. But it really helps us also sort of to hone our own thinking and our own reporting around this topic. But thank you very much, and we look forward to speaking to you all soon, I think. Tom, is that it?
Thanks, Tim. That's brilliant. Bye, everyone.